Hey people, this could be a good one here. If you think you can prove me wrong, anything I tell you here, leave that comment right here so everybody can look down and not waste their time. But I'm the world's leading expert on ancient biblical Greek and Hebrew. Prove me wrong right there. But I'm fixing to prove to you that the Nephilim attack has already taken place, and it's all written right there in both the Hebrew and the Greek. Nephilim is a Hebrew word. It just comes up a couple times, 3 times. And they chose to translate it with gigantes in the Greek, in the Septuagint. And so that was in the 3rd or 2nd century BC that they made the choice to translate it this way. But this gigantes, this is antes. This is antes, and it means for representation. Ante up. Represent yourself. And gig is the ancient English word for a short period of time, a day. This is a one-day job. It's a gig. And so the day represents. And this is the ode to the day, the song to the day represents. And so it's going to let us know in these 2 songs when the flood comes. And so they got confused that the Nephilim that were on the earth, were the sons of God. But they're missing this word here. This is by mime, M-I-M-E, by mime them, B-Y-M-I-M-E. And it means by representate. This is the word ante. It was for the Nephilim in the gigantes. It's a representation of. And so the Nephilim is in, E-N is in, and a F-L-Y, infly me, M-E-J-U-V-A-R-X. Inflamijuvers, and that means from the juvenile state. That's a Latin word in taxology, me juvers, from the juvenile state, the fly from the juvers, and so that means a maggot. In maggots, by mime, by representate, and come a hurricane, and a swarm as arrive, and they came on in a swarm. It was a bunch of them, of the Bengalis, the Bengalium, and that's I believe the same word they use today for the Bengalis. They're the 2nd largest population. We think of them Bengali as Indian, but they're spread all around the world, and they would say that
Bangali,
the Benali. And so they're now seen as an Indo-Aryan mix. But that's what this is talking about. This is the Indo-Aryan mix. And so they say this Bengali started from Noah's grandson, Bang. Bang, the son. And so Ham got with a Hindu, the hind. And their son was Bang. So Bang was the grandson of Noah. And so in Genesis 9, after the covenant of the rainbow is with the British. And you can see this is an Aryan language. And so Hind, that's hind. That's where your Hindu comes from. And they're behind and they're a hurry. They're trying to catch up. Come a hurry. Come a hurricane. As rive. When they came in, as arrive. The Ben Alis. And so, being the mark of time, and the plural gods, the all him, inhale him, to inhale him. And you'll see that when the trees in the garden and Ben inhale him, you can see that when God takes a walk in the garden, and you hail him intook, inhale, the hail intook. The Halim intook oxygen. The Yahweh God among the trees of the garden, of the trees of the generation. The trees create oxygen. Intook. And so the God here is a smell, and you hail him intook oxygen. What you're smelling. And come a hurricane as rive. Ben Halim, all been what? Oh, they done been up in all our women, been what? And all been what had them, as in the past, and all been what had 'em to yield William, and YLD, to yield William. William coming from will them, and yield will them. Him, blood, and will them blood, the government, the mighty men, the governm, a serm. A serm is somebody who has the word, the haser from, a serm, the owl, the owled, the OWL, the owl, mancy, the old mancy. And so it's the old men, the old mancy, the getting with the young girls is what it's talking about. And the old mancy has 'em. And fly me juvers by mime 'em. I represent 'em by maggots. There's a bunch of 'em. And come a hurricane as arrive, and they come in a swarm. Bengalium. The time, hail is where you come from. The time comes from. And all been what had 'em to yield will them hema, blood, the governm, a serm. Oh, I assure you from a serm of will mancy, of old mancy, the owl mancy. The sea has 'em. The old mancy has 'em. Assure from old mancy has 'em. So the word Noah, they just spell it with an N and an H. And so in the Greek, that's why they had to change the word. They couldn't use Nephilim because you can't have an N-E in Greek. You see the E-N is in, and it just replaces the B in the Hebrew. Where you see this, you see a B in the opposite. And the reason they do that is because an N-E becomes a B. So you can't have an N-E in the word Nephilim because it would change it to a B. And so in order to have a N-E, it would have to be spelt with an N-H. And that would tell off too much. Oh, that's Nephilim, are the Noah, the sons of Noah, N-H. And they couldn't spell it N-E because people would have understood, that meant B, in phylum, be in the phylum. And it would have been too easy to see, that phylum is that place between the kingdom and the class. And so all the fly from juvies were the sons of Noah. And so that's why you won't see it here in the Greek. But the Greek makes it real easy to see that it's talking about the calendar. And this is a oi, hoy there, and to see make, it means to call, kind of like a name, to see make its position, not necessarily its name, but its number, the call, and the call, the T-H-E, to call the gig, to call the short period of time, to call the day represents, has on epithages has become a perfect representation, epithages. And what it really means is the fifth, the F-I-T-H, the fifth sedges. And so this is where your word the fifth, I plead, the fifth comes from. And they're not talking of the sedges. It's where your word sages comes from. It's where sedges, the plant used to make papyrus. These are the writings, and these are the 5 sedges, epithages, a perfect representation of, those with the sedges, the writers into his, come the rays. And so just the same as the N, the K does the same thing and turns into a L when it has an E following it. And so this is reading as a E-L-I-N-A-I-S, Elenays. And come the rays, Helenays. And so Helen, that's Greece. The only place in the world you find the word nays is a whipped up white topping, mayonnaise, and they come in like a hurricane, a big whipped up white topping, the Hellenes, and the Met. And so this isn't, it looks like, Achaia herein of, and Met herein of, but it's not. It's the metal. The metal they know has on. They Sephiro. The metal they know they has on. They Sephiro unto. So we can see better now why in the Greek, they called Noah's Ark a cubiton. And so this is the mixing of the Ari-Indo. The mixing of the Ari-Indo astrology in the cubiton. And we'll see that down there in the Greek as soon as he starts building the boat, the ark. But, the Pythages into his come the race of Helen, of the Greeks. And so they had to write theirself in, the Hellenes. And so come a raise Hellenes, back in those days. But this is more replacing the hurricane. In meddling no, as on the Sephiro, unto oi, unto call, vio, to go it of. On the oi, on the call, the number, the hoi, vio, to go it of. On the metal to go on its Sephiro with its day of the gig represents. And so this lets me know, most of the time this is theos. And so now it's the theo. And so the metal going on the Sephiro is to the call to goes it of theo, of a single God, of the of. Forced as together as tone on thereupon, and mixing the blood together, and together as tone on thereupon. We, key is a W, we, gene, one N, the second one's reading as I, and the gene is on, and have to is, for themselves, procreated for themselves, and the gene is on, have to is, Hellenoi, the Hellenoi, Enoi, that's the son. Your daughter, she's the one to the gate, meets you at the gate with all the questions. And your son, he just annoy. And have to is the Helen call, the Hellenoi. Has on oi, the call, the number of the day represents. The call of a join, of a Jon, of a join as call on their apoi, opposing poi, the opposing name, the mouth in the call, the poi, poem, the poet, per orally make, and on their apoi, the word to call, on 'em as toy, when you want to play, call on 'em as toy. And so to call the gig represents has on, upon, the fit is sedges, the fit of writings, into is, or into the shame raise. The shame, SHM, that's your word shem, the name, the name to raise. On those days, into is come the rays Hellenes, the rays in the days of Hellenes, when it whipped up the white cream, and the metal in no as on his Sephiro unto call, goes it of thee of a forced as together as it on. And so the problem in the astrology, is all these things that are lined up, you see this is all around, all these wheels turn, and as times change, all this has to be turned. All the different qualities had to be changed is what this is about. And where they had a cute little story, and the moon was bounced around in different shacks, and the sun was bounced around in different houses. As the time changed, things started coming together. Yale, They were half and half. The stories weren't fitting right. All these old odes, they were to remember the astrology. And astrology was astronomy at this time. It was all the same. Some people called them gods, and some people called them time-keeping planets. And so you had to learn all the stories of the gods in order to remember all the numbers. The ois, the calls, the four-letter names of God. The calls are coming from a longitude and a latitude. To call the gigantes has on epithages of the perfect examples, the gods, the earth, pithages, into is come the rays, Hellenes. And so in the Hebrew, it was come a hurry, as in things are moving too fast, the astrology's off. And the metal in no is on the Sephiro, onto the call to go it of, on the number it goes of, on the planet, is the metal. To go it of, the god of, the planet of, and forced as together as it on. They're coming too quick. It's before its time. And on drop on. This T and the D are interchangeable. Got the drop on or on drop on. And so this Genesis here is more like we and Genios. We genius on. And so it doesn't mean procreated as in fucking. It means procreated as in we thought this idea up and created this. We genius on. We the geniuses that figured this out. Have to is. And so this is where they actually hide the word Noah's, and be the same in the Hebrew. The Helen no has on. And that was Noah's name. He was named Noah because he knew that the astrology was off. He understood the astrology. And that's what no means, the Noah, the one that knew it. And Helen no has on the call. If the gig represents call a payon as, pay, P-A-Y, a payon as, and that would be the slaves, there were the paids, the payon as, to pay your respects on the right day. To call on the drop, on drop number, and to call on the mast number. The man and the woman, the mastoi, the tit, and the drop. So I read this as the call, and it's better read, to see make. To see make is when you see it, you know where it's at, you made it. And in the Hebrew, the numbers and the letters are the same. So, it's a call, hoy. To see make, the gig represents, has on the epithages into is. And come the rays, Hellenes. And the metal in no is on the Sephiro onto see make the go it of the of, to go it to the of, to go to the of, which one it belongs to. The force together as tone on thereupon we genius on have to is hell in noi. And have to is, or have to cell, S-E-L, like your jail cell, the place it belongs. And have to sell, they know has on. To see make, the jig represents. To see make, a pay on as. To see make, on drop, the number, the drop, the call. To see make, on 'em a toy. On 'em a toy, the mastoi, the titties, love to play with them, the toy. And so that surely means this number right here, on 'em is toy, on the mastoi. It sits out here on the titty, little nipple, a nipplum, the nipplum, on the mastoi. And this went on longer than I wanted, but let me go down here and show you where it starts with these numbers and how they twist them. And you can see down here, when Noah found, is the where. You found it, where, W-R-E, the where. It's where it's at, where it was found. And node, the where. And so here, again, Jesse, Jhse. Double up a letter, the final one's a I, J. And you'll see that IHS, that's the base word for created. And it means more about creating law, and yes, Y-E-S. And yes means the things you're allowed to do, what is allowed, so this is what's good. And again, yes, the no threes. VO us, to go us ton, to fashion ton, and ton the name, and ton the cam, and ton the jacket. The picture seal, what it looks like in Hebrew, the jacket. And the pither, pithering, and was corrupt. The pither of the edge, the edge. The writing's on the outside of the circle, getting corrupted. The pither on the edge. And it's because Easter's, it's moving 1 degree every 72 years. And so the numbers, the letters, the calls that you were grabbing are starting to move over. The pither, the edge in Antion, in representation on, unto of, in a representation on it of, the God, the seed, the Sephiro. And we place the edge. We place the edge, adikyas. Adikyas, iniquity, that was the same word for the owl in the Hebrew. Iniquity is the owls in old. And so when he tells him start making his art, you can see it's, the same word is the cross that Jesus hung on, the Zulon, it's the same word. And it actually means the upright part of the cross. And for which is on own, sea of took a boat on, to took a boat on, make then for yourself an ark, for which is on own, sea, for which is on own yourself, to see of took, T-O-K-I-B-O-T, to took a boat on. And X, this is L2 into the X, or E-K-X-E-T-S. And X will on a teeter go, the teeter gone on. And so they'll read this as a tetragon, and it means teeter. It means the teeter is the four. If you have 4 legs on a chair, it'll teeter. And it's the same thing as the Hebrew. The base word for the 4 is arbo, and it's where you word warble, wobble. The orbits, the orbits aren't perfectly round. But yeah, when you got 4 legs, the teeter are gone. The 3, the triacusion, of 2, for which seas, for which grab a hold of, to take. The sea is, the seas. See, this gets done. And of 2, for which seas, think about on. The think about on, the geniuses that created it. The think about on, 3 akuzi on, 3 together. And so it's talking about the 4 winds and the 3 earths. The earths are the planets, the metals. And the 3 akuzi on, the 3 together on, the Fixin. To make as the sky. The sky boat of, and upon it, check onto, the fix onto, the flat as. This is where your word Platos comes from. Platos and flat as. And 3 account to, fix onto up so saw this. If you look at this from the right direction over here, you're looking at a cross, and you're looking at the upsos and the flat as. You would use this to get your upsos, and when you use this to get your flat as. Your flat as the width, and your upsos is the height. And it's a UPSO, upso saw this. And so that's why they put this word ark in here, because it plainly says, the boat of, the sky boat of. And that's what you do, it's a big arc up there. You're shooting arcs. And a fixon, to get a fix on it is an arc, not a cubit. So this Greek here, it looks like the more advanced, the slide wheel, where these dark lines, this turned. And so you could figure everything up real fast. It was a slide rule. And that's why you see the word Sephiro in the Greek, and you didn't see it in the Hebrew. In the Hebrew, it's going to be talking about the older astrology, where you had to remember all the stories and do the math on your fingers. And so I made a movie about 3 years ago when I was predicting the coming of Aquarius was going to be Easter of this year, 2023. And I found it somewhere in the Hebrew where it was talking about Jupiter coming up with the sun in Pisces. And that's what you're going to see Easter morning. If you go out to the beach Easter morning so you can see the sun rising, you're going to see Pisces pointing to where the sun's coming up. And the sun's going to come up right here, and you're going to see Jupiter come up just before it. And according to what I was reading, that's the mark of the change to age of Aquarius. And so you can see it's talking about the same thing we're having problems with today, and men began to multiply on the face of the earth. And where have been hail him, with where he's been coming from at Benwet, at the place that Benwet had from in the past, the seat of it in, where that king was sitting, the wife, the one it was married to, the wife will them nice them, to make it nice, their wives. That's why they put wives under the nice them. This is your wife, the one you make up to, and this is the making nice. The wife's the nice them. When it fits, everything fits in good. The wife nice them. And from the classer in chore too. And not to choose, but to chore. And they was taking wives from the class into chore. And so it's saying, that the English were in India and they were mating with their servants. From the class or bitcher too. Two as in connected, the bitcher connected. And so that would have worked out better with Prince Harry. He's the one that married into the chore class. From the class or in chore too. But it is simply just talking about the astrology, and how to match it all up into the classes and the chores too, in what day and what time that chore's done. And so this is talking about them pouring in down there on our southern border, like maggots, millions of them, and come a hurry. And so there's a whole bunch of things that point to it in the Hebrew. And all Benwet had willed William. That means that William is still the prince. He's just willed. He's not the king yet. And him, hemorrhaging and bleeding. And bleeding the government, a serm, the old man sea has them. And our governments, they all up there, they bleeding us to death. We must have just sent like $100 billion to the Biden associates over there. And I ain't never been one to believe none of this bullshit, but the better I get at reading it, the harder it is to deny that either somebody is using the playbook and following the plays, or somebody's predicted the future a long time ago. So that last movie I put up, they pulled it back down. I had to clip a minute off the front. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't go with the rest of it. But it was on my Facebook. I saw the morning I posted that they had searched, and BMG took down this movie that I'd posted over 2.5 years ago. Back in the beginning of the coup, when Madonna was at the awards, and she was predicting everybody wearing a mask, and the riots, and the burning, and everything coming apart. And I thought it's strange that they should go back and just now find that out now. And it made me think that, they fixing to hit us with another wave. So it'll look like it's missing something again, and it kind of just cuts in when I'm talking about this for a couple seconds. But then it goes on to the movie, and everything's pretty plain. Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.